today's news.
Hello and welcome to Old News, the programme and podcast which looks at the news stories of today through the papers of yesterday. Peel Power Station this week, been back in the news flow recently due to work going on the chimney, or the top of the chimney there. I thought we'd go back and see how the station has featured in the papers over the years. Going back to relatively early on, in fact, Ramsey Courier, Friday, August the 5th, 1949. Isle of Man Electricity Board proposed Power Station Peel appointment of Clerk of the Works. Applications, we're told, are invited for the post of Clerk of Works in connection with the building of a new power station and 12 dwellings at Peel. The work will be commenced almost immediately. Don't think you get that now. Particulars of duties and conditions of engagement may be obtained on application to Messrs Davidson, Marsh & Co, Chartered Architects and Surveyors, Bridge Chambers, West Quay, Ramsey. Applications with 2 recent testimonials should be enclosed in sealed envelopes marked Clerk of the Works and should be in the hands of the undersigned not later than 12 noon on Wednesday the 10th of August 1949. The undersigned being the appropriately named L. Douglas, with 2 S's, Engineer and Secretary, Isle of Man Electricity Board. If we go to the Times in Saturday, February the 24th of 1951, we read of the houses at Peel Power Station mentioned in that earlier piece. Mr Bolton's attack on principle. In Tynwald on Tuesday, approval was given to a resolution to provide £12,544 for the erection of 12 houses at the new power station erected by the Electricity Board at Peel. After Mr Corran had moved the resolution, the proposal came under criticism from Mr Bolton, who said that while he was not opposed to it, he was opposed to the principle that these houses should be erected for technicians at public expense. He also said that the case put forward by Mr Corran for the grant, that the board were in a different position from a local authority as they had to pay income tax, was wrong. If they had to pay income tax, they must be making a profit, and they would not be taxed on anything but their profits. Mr Kelly was also critical of the financial position and said that it was wrong that the government should subsidise these houses. The cost of the houses should be a charge on the revenue of the board, who should, if necessary, increase their charges. Finance along the lines contained in the resolution could only end in the bankruptcy court. The Finance and Consultative Committee had examined this proposal and had altered the rent from 15 shillings to 16 shillings and sixpence, but 45 shillings would be an economic rent for the houses. 3 years later, in the Times of 1954, Saturday, November the 13th, we read of an electricity exchange, an agreement for a year. A scheme for the exchange of bulk supplies between the Pulrose and Peel power stations for a trial period of a year has been approved by the Electricity Committee of Douglas Corporation, endorsed by the Town Council on Tuesday. It was not an election stunt, said Alderman A.J. Tier, explaining the scheme. It had been going on for some time, and the committee was satisfied that it was a feasible and workable scheme. The first hint of agreement on the scheme was given during an election address by a former councillor, Mr T. Radcliffe, last month, when he said, "Watch the papers" on November the 9th. Mr C. Anderson, Borough Electrical Engineer, and Mr L. Douglas, Electricity Board Engineer, said on Wednesday that although generating costs would probably be cut, the public would continue to pay the same. The increasing price of coal and rising distribution costs, the engineers explained, ruled out any reduction meanwhile. In England, the grid system is operated, power station linked with power station for maximum efficiency and economy. The 2 electricity authorities here hope to operate a small-scale grid eventually. The bigger the generating stations, the lower the cost to the consumer, said the engineers. On that reckoning, they think the tariffs on the island are reasonable by comparison with England. In the Isle of Man Times, Saturday, March the 20th, 1954, Peel Power Station in the trade news. Peel Power Station is given a boost in this month's issue of the Oil Engine and Gas Turbine magazine. A must-read. The writer states that the plant is claimed to be the largest post-war diesel power station in Great Britain. Areas supplied by the power station include the townships of Ramsey, Peel, Port Erin and Castletown, in addition to about 36 villages and hamlets in the rural districts. The distribution area is 280 square miles, which has a population of 25,000 and premises numbering 7,859. Since coming into operation, the power station has progressed steadily, and for the year ended March 1953, units totalled 19,751,529, an increase of 300,729 over the previous year. For the farm electrification scheme, 11.5 miles of overhead high-tension lines, 100 yards of underground high-tension cable and 11 3/4 miles of overhead LT lines have been installed. 31 substations have been put into commission and over 500 farms have been connected. The Electricity Board also have a valuable stock of material in readiness for further extensions. The writer foresees plenty of opportunity for further development by the board, as only a portion of the farms are using electrical energy and many private houses still use paraffin lamps. It's amazing. This is 1954. You forget, don't you? A lot is still on paraffin and a lot of farms up until then, no electricity at all. He prophesises the demand for electricity will increase during the coming years, and as the cost of diesel generating plants has been found economical, more diesel plants will be installed throughout the island. Don't think we had that many, did we? The total expenditure for Peel Power Station was £286,759. In the Examiner of Friday, September the 14th, 1956, a bit of a sad case to a degree, lost his job before the court case. Stated to have lost his employment at the RAF Derby station, which he had only just started, Ernest Gerard Kane, 8 The Bungalow, Power Station, Peel, so he's in those houses, pleaded guilty at the High Bailiff's Court in Ramsey on Wednesday to the larceny of a car battery valued at £6 10 shillings. Evidence was given that the defendant began work as a batman. You don't get many of those now, apart from maybe Bob Moon and the Bat Group. He knocked off work at 10 p.m. and found he could not get his car started. He had bought the vehicle a week previously. He told the police he conceived the daft idea of exchanging his own battery with that in another car nearby belonging to an officer cadet, and after that drove home to Peel. At first, when interviewed, he denied taking the battery, but later admitted the offence and said he was sorry. Inspector Gale said the defendant had a good character up to this. The High Bailiff said it was a very stupid thing to do and dismissed the charge under the Probation of Offenders Act on payment of 4 shillings costs. Sad that he lost his job, but a daft thing to do. In the Isle of Man Daily Times, Monday, October the 20th, 1958, conditions at Peel Power Station, we read, detrimental to health, says expert. Report follows complaint by MHK. Mr Collister asks questions in Tynwald. The working conditions at the Peel Power Station, criticised by Mr Edward Collister in Tynwald on July the 8th, have been the subject of a report by an expert who states the conditions on the occasion of his visit a month later were detrimental to health, and that his view is supported by the Medical Officer of Health for the island. When Douglas Corporation applied to Tynwald in July for powers to borrow money for the installation of 2 diesel generators at their Pulrose station, Mr Collister remarked that he hoped the fumes from the diesel engines in the Douglas station will not be like the fumes they are producing in Peel, because I understand that the fumes there are affecting the health of the staff to a serious extent. Replying to Mr Collister, the Speaker, Sir Joseph Qualtrough, who is Chairman of the Electricity Board, said he was somewhat disturbed by the remarks made by the Honourable Member for North Douglas. I'm well acquainted with the state of things at Peel. We have there 7 diesel engines with 1 or 2 standing by, working all the time, and if anyone thinks they can go into a station where 3 or 4 diesel engines are working and have absolutely no trouble, nothing but fresh air, they are very much mistaken. He goes on, there are no fumes in the ordinary sense of the word because the exhaust of the diesels discharges outside the building, but there is a certain amount of smell from the oil within the building and the oil on the engines. The Honourable Member for North Douglas very kindly took the trouble to go over Peel and inspect the plant and see what there was to see. I'm bound to say that there are good ventilator doors which open at both ends of the building, and there is a ventilator in the roof, and the board has been considering whether it is possible to put more ventilators in the station. It is a problem which we have had in our minds and are only too anxious to have the best possible conditions for the men to work in. But I want to dispel the idea entirely that there are conditions which affect a man's health. As a matter of fact, the health of the workers in the station is better than that of the men who are always working in the open air. It ends saying the board has its mind on the question of making the conditions of work as favourable as they possibly can, and I don't think there is anything further we can do at the moment, although we are still investigating. A wonderfully quirky piece from the Isle of Man Examiner of Thursday, July the 3rd, 1958. Steam baths for fishermen. There is one obvious use to which the waste heat at the Peel Power Station could be put, Mr. Albert Hill told our reporter. Mr. Hill said that he had read in this paper last Tuesday the question asked in Tynwald as to whether anything was being done to utilise the waste heat from Peel Power Station. Surely, commented Mr. Hill, the ideal solution for the use of some at least of this is to pipe it to baths in Peel for the fishermen. What a grand thing it would be, he said, if the fishermen could have hot steam baths. Mr. Hill added that he had mentioned this matter some 5 years ago, but nothing had been done about it. There is a ready-made supply at Peel, he said, and asked, why not use it? It will be recalled that in Tynwald, Sir Joseph Coltrose said that they had considered the matter of the waste heat, but they couldn't find anyone who needed it. Commander Quine, who asked the question, said that heat was a most expensive commodity. Well, he's certainly right there. And finally, a slightly worrying story from the Peel City Guardian of Saturday, March the 25th, 1961. An explosion at Peel Power Station. 2 local men hurt. One of the turbines at Peel Power Station exploded on Thursday at 11:50 a.m. It created a considerable amount of damage and 2 men were injured and taken to hospital suffering from cuts and burns. I believe they both recovered. They being Mr. Ian Quirk and Mr. Jerry Burden. Following the explosion, which was heard as far away as Dorby, thick black smoke poured from the building. The power lasted just long enough for the siren to sound, calling the Peel Fire Brigade, who was soon on the scene, and then came the Douglas and Kirkmichael brigades. Prior to the arrival of the brigade, the men at the station had the hydrants going. As a result of the explosion, 10 generators had to be switched off, and with the exception of Douglas, the island was without electricity. Douglas took over supplying of the north of the island and Castletown. The fire was soon under control and was extinguished at 12:45 a.m. Then came the job of pumping out the water, clearing up the debris to get the power running, and the power was on again at 3:45 p.m. They did very well, didn't they? And then the gentlemen who were hurt. Ian Quirk, aged 26, is a fitter of Westview and Peel and is suffering from head injuries, burns and shock. He was working close to the generator at the time of the explosion. Very lucky man. Jerry Burden, aged 44, is on maintenance, residing at 2 of the power station houses and is suffering from cuts and burns. They were lucky chaps. Happily, they survived. The initial cause of the fire, we're told, was an explosion in the crankcase in number 2 engine due to a cracked cylinder which blew out the crankcase door. Normally, the incident would not have been serious, but unfortunately the force of the explosion fractured a 1 1/4 inch gas oil pipe. This allowed hundreds of gallons of paraffin-like fuel to pour onto the raging fire. Goodness me, could have been a lot worse. Perhaps you remember it, or other stories. And if you do, and if you have anything to say about any of the stories you hear on Old News, get in touch. Love to hear from you. Howard Kane, with an E, at maxradio.com. Peel Power Station, Old News. Until next time, cheerio. You're gonna be yesterday's news.